Okay. Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to the Meet the Author session with bestselling author Kiran Manral. The session is hosted by the Himalayan Book Club, a Himalayan Writing Retreat Initiative. Himalayan Book Club was born purely out of our love for the written word. We aim to bridge the gap between the authors and the readers. To become a member, you can visit our website, which we'll be sharing towards the end of the session for all of you once again. I'm Namrata, the Digital and Outreach Coordinator at the Himalayan Writing Retreat, and I'm excited to be hosting the first session of the book club today with one of my favorite authors, Kiran. As an author, Kiran Manral needs no introduction. She's an award-winning author, and she has been a TEDx speaker, columnist, and a mentor based in Mumbai. She worked as a journalist before she quit full-time to work as a full-time mommy. She made her debut with The Reluctant Detective in 2011, and since then she's written across genres in both fiction and non-fiction. She has close to 12 solo titles to her credit and a lot of short stories in various magazines and acclaimed anthologies like Have a Safe Journey, Boo, The Best Asian Speculative Fiction, etc. She has won a lot of awards for her novels, and she was shortlisted for the Femina Women Awards for literary contribution in 2017. Today, we'll be talking about the latest book, More Things in Heaven and Earth. For all of you asking us, yes, this book will soon be available for review exclusively for the book club members. So if you've not joined it yet, please do so now. Without much ado, let's welcome Kiran Manral to the session. Welcome, Kiran. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We are excited to host you and talk about your latest book, More Things in Heaven and Earth, published by Amaryllis.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Namrata and Chetan. My pleasure to talk about my books. That's all we authors love to do, talk about our books.
So the first question that I have for you today is, like we all know, More Things in Heaven and Earth is a phrase from Hamlet by Shakespeare. So can you tell us a bit about what inspired you to choose this title?
It's always it's sort of been stuck in my head ever since I read Hamlet way back and I dreamt of philosophy. And I think all my reading to begin with, then my writing has been an exploration of what we can't explain and what we cannot understand. If you've read The Face of the Window, you know what I'm talking about. There's so much out there that just cannot be explained scientifically. And I think somehow with this book, it's a very strange book. So that title fitted in perfectly. It was just the title I wrote the book with. And Rashmi, my editor at Amaryllis, liked it and it just went ahead with that. So it was a trial title that just work in progress, it just stayed.
Yeah, but it's very apt for the book. Like when I completed the book, I would definitely have to nod in agreement that yes, there could not have been a better title with this for this story. The other thing
Thanks
that
so
we
much,
want
Namrata.
You're most welcome. More Things in Heaven and Earth central character, Kamla Malik, is a very layered character. She has a lot of complexities depicted around her. And yet at the core, you have managed to make a reader feel for her. I would not want to comment on what you've made us feel because it might be revealing a bit too much. But was a character inspired by someone? And what kind of homework or research did you undergo to create her?
I think not one particular person. I think most of my protagonists, I don't like them to be unidimensional. I don't like them to be someone you can predict what their next action would be. I don't want, women to be, my protagonist to fit into the slot that this is what a woman should do. If she's a widow, she needs to behave in a certain way. If she is an older person, she has to behave in a certain way. No, I just want to keep sort of subverting that every single time when, they do something out of the blue that surprises me as a writer. So then I hope they surprise the reader as well. Not a single person who inspired Kamla. I think Kamla came about from observations of many women who have been in a similar situation. My mother lost her husband very young. So I think a lot of the grief and the closure and the coming to terms with the loss I drew from my own observations of how my mother coped, who unfortunately lost their husbands very young. So when they were in their mid-30s. So I think a lot of it one draws from real life and a lot of it one makes up as one goes along.
Sure. As you know, one thing that I've observed about you is that you have very easily been able to switch between literary fiction and what is otherwise, popularly known as commercial fiction in terms of your writing. So for this book, I would say that you were leaning towards more of a literary fiction, while if I were to look at your humor or drama or the chick flicks, though I don't like using that term, but when I talk about those kitty party murders or the lipstick and things, other books like that. So how do you manage to do that? Does that need some tips that you could share with some of our readers? How as a writer have you been able to do that?
Tips, I don't know. I think it's been my training as a journalist, because you learn to switch between business reporting, I've done gender writing, I've run hardcore research, I've done writing across the genres in journalism.
Right.
I brought a bit of that to my read across genres. I read very diverse books. So switching voices is not something I would recommend everyone does, because it's definitely not something that is easy. And if you don't pull it off too well, it can come across as very contrived. But I think if you've read extensively enough, and if you have done your 10,000 plus hours of practice, as Gladwell told us to do, you should be able to do it. Nothing comes easy. You just put in your work and you get it done.
That sounds like an interesting tip, actually. One of the most common reviews that this book has is that the narrative is actually very strong. The descriptions come alive, which is a key to writing great thrillers. And you've explored a lot of themes which otherwise are considered a taboo, like family dysfunctionality, death, grief, trauma. And then you've added to it something like a spooky element, a thrill, or a mystery. So was it a conscious decision, and did your publisher, or even were you worried what the reader's reaction would be? Because when we usually write taboo topics, or we write on topics which are not talked about so openly, we are always concerned about how will it be perceived. So was that a thought in your mind when you were working on this theme?
If that stays a thought in my mind, I'll never be able to write any single thing, because I don't think about what anyone's going to think about. Uh, I'm very self-indulgent when I write. It's not a good thing. It sort of makes me write all sort of strange things. So if Namrata, you've read The Face at the Window. So Mrs. McNally is not a characteristic mother.
Yeah.
She's a very detached mother. She sort of totally suffers the mother trophy, and she's a mother who rejects the child, who gives the child away for adoption, and then in her later years wants. So that's how I like to bring my characters. Kamla Malik, for instance, she's a widow. She's a young widow. She doesn't want to live a chaste life. In fact, one of the reviews I got on Amazon was, I'm very interested in how Kamla Malik, being a widow, has a sex life. So people are shocked by these things. And I'm like, why? She is not dead, right? She's alive. And why should she not continue with her physical desires? And why is it expected that she has to just shut herself up in a cupboard and sit on the shelf? So these are the things I want to write about. And if I keep thinking, oh, how will people react to it, I'll never be able to write these characters. So I don't think about it. I just write them as they come to me.
That's actually very well said. As I mentioned before, the reader is always on tenterhooks in this book as to what will happen next throughout till the end. So how easy or difficult was it to create this in your words, or while you were working on it? Was it that something you always wanted and you ended the chapter on a high? And did it always come through your first draft?
No, this book has been in the writing for over 4 to 5 years.
Wow.
So, okay. So there have been many, many versions of this book on my computer. I think there are around no less than 10 versions before. I must have rewritten it at least 15 times. So it's been a work in progress for so long. And then of course it goes into edits, and my editor, she tightens it and she makes it much, she polishes it, she makes it shine. So all the loose ends are trimmed away, and she sort of brings it together. As Tori Morrison said, she gathered me up and makes me whole. So how did I make the endings are very important to me. I agonize over the ending of the entire book. So even with The Face at the Window, or Missing Presumed Dead, even now with More Things in Heaven and Earth, the ending is, and then one moment comes when you know that this is just flowing, and then you put it down and that's it. Then you know this is it, right? Okay, write the end and send it off to the editor, and don't tamper with it anymore. As a writer, you know exactly when that moment comes when it's just perfect. So for me, that came after around 4.5 years of working on this book. I knew what the ending needed to be.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't know where it was going to end or how it was going to end till then, to be honest.
What would you want a reader to take away from this book?
What would I want a reader to take away from this book? There are a lot of themes I've tried to explore about grief, about mourning, about finding yourself, about guilt, betrayal. I think I would like a reader to think that with this book, they're exploring more than one dimension of not just Kamla Malik, but also themselves and their reactions to her character, because she's not the character she seems. I don't want to give away more. She is not what she seems. And she's not what she's telling you she is from the beginning. So don't take things at face value. Don't have your mindsets already fixed about anything and anyone. Think about what could be the deeper story, the hidden story. I think that's what I want to tell people.
So actually, I have just saved a passage which I actually loved when I started reading it, and it was the introductory passage to this novel. And that was something that stayed in my memory purely because I would definitely want to quote this if somebody asks what is show and don't tell. The difference is actually very, very evident in this passage. So if you don't mind, I would actually want to read this passage. So the passage is: the island rose resplendent from the fork in the river, between the mainland and the sea, bordered by the blue-gray of the sea in the distance. It was visible only if one strained one's eyes from a vantage point on the western side, a narrow ridge, a high cliff, and a thin stretch of beach that was more gravel than sand. Who was to say where the river ended and the sea began? Water flowed into itself, and the sweet became the salty, where the brine and the riverine coagulated and became the ocean, primordial churn from the beginning of time and earth and life. I've actually highlighted it. It's something I really love. I keep going back to this passage whenever I feel that there is too much of show, there is too much of telling happening, and there is no showing. This is a brilliant example of doing this, and this actually brings the place alive. So if you were to say, if somebody were to say that when you comment that I have been told that this book is actually your best work, I would actually agree because of these reasons. One other thing that I have always wanted to ask you is, this book is actually a conversation starter in a lot of ways. It actually opens up a lot of things where people want to discuss, want to talk about, be it widowhood, be it grief, be it about their families, or be it about people who are, toxic, or who are not that good a family member or positive contribution to you as an individual in the family. Was that consciously done? Was that something that you always worked on as the theme when you worked, and you wanted it to be a conversation starter because it's high time that people need to be speaking about such issues and we need to be talking about them?
So I think with three of my books, The Face at the Window, Missing Presumed Dead, and Now More Things, I've tried to touch on themes that we don't talk about. Motherhood is there, and abandonment, and The Face at the Window. Also motherhood, abandonment, dysfunctional marital relationships in Missing Presumed Dead. And this one, widowhood, toxic family situations, dysfunctional situations, and moving out of it. And I don't know if I intended them to be conversational starters, but I definitely wanted to highlight certain things. Mental illness, for instance, in Missing Presumed Dead, women in mental illness. In your, I think, dysfunctional families and dysfunctional, I won't give away more stuff. Please read the book. So if I say more, then you'll know they'll know what the situation is. So I wanted to talk about things that we don't really talk about. There's a lot of romance, there's a lot of happy, feel good kind of stuff out there. And the dark underbelly of life is, I think, I want to show, not tell.
That's actually a very interesting thing for authors to take away, and even the readers, they would definitely like to read a story which is so complex, and at the same time it still makes them think and question what is around them in the society or even in their own life, what they are seeing at the moment. So is there any favorite character that you have from this?
I think her aunt, Kamini.
Why would that be so?
She is quite an iconoclast, and she has done things her way, and she's sort of lived life on her own terms. And in a way, she also accepts death on her own terms. She doesn't want to go through all the treatments, and she just wants to be allowed to let go. So she to defy a very traditional family and to go away and to make your mark in a field like art back when she did. It's a character I think I would have enjoyed knowing her as a person. So I created her.
So do we see you writing about her in another story, or maybe bringing her along to another story?
Alas, she's already dead. Unless I write the prologue to a story.
Ghosts can always come back, because you've been writing across themes, which shows that, people can always come back in various forms, which may need not be alive in that form for that story to come back to.
Yeah, but some things are best left unstirred, and some dead are best left dead.
Definitely. Is there any passage from your book that you would like to read, or you would like to share with the readers?
Passage, I haven't thought about anything, but well, let me just see. Is there anything that you especially I like the okay, so this is a bit where the young Kamla gets into the attic, if you know that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you what happens in the attic, but I can tell you that I just want to read it for the sake of the atmosphere that I created. Okay, where is it? I began, and as all children do when bored, I began wandering around the house in search of something to entertain myself with when a thump from the ceiling drew my attention. Outside the windows, a thin fog began curling up, blotting out the pale yellow sun that had made an abashed appearance in the morning after days of bone-numbing chill. Again, the thump above my head. I looked up at the ceiling. Was there really a ghost there, one who would drag us into a grey and fearsome afterlife with her, I wondered. Curiosity and idleness always made for a deadly combination. I scooted up the stairs before my courage betrayed me, taking care to tread softly so no creaking betrayed me. I slowly pushed the trapdoor up and limbered myself up into the master room. The first thing that hit me was the smell. The room smelled of sadness and disuse, and dust coagulated in corners, and spiders spinning undisturbed. If you could bottle despair, this would be it. The dust moth shimmered in the faint light coming through a skylight as I stepped through, looking around. The room yawned as I entered and extended itself, as though shaking off the inertia of disuse. It was honestly quite a letdown. Nothing that remotely suggested a ghost within, no shadows, no cold breaths down the nape of my neck, whispering sibilant threats, no sudden sounds. It was just another old attic, a place with discarded furniture that had outlived its utility, some boxes that were nailed shut, huge tin trunks, and that dusty old carved wood trunk with its lock imposingly shut. But it was childhood, and locks were no deterrent for curious little hands which had always had hope even in the face of obviousness. So I'll leave it at there for the reader to wonder what happens when she tampers with that box.
Sure. It was great speaking to you, Kiran. And we are actually very excited to be hosting your book to our book club members soon, next week. And we look forward to them having their questions, which we would love to discuss in our book club.
Absolutely.
We will definitely
be honored.
Yeah, we'll definitely let you know. Thank you so much. for your time.
Thank you so much. And this is the
It was
book.
wonderful. Yes. It's got a lovely cover. It's got a lovely cover and a very eye-catching one at that. That's actually how I discovered Mishta.
Yeah, all credit to Mishta. She's done all my recent covers. That's The Face of the Window. She did my first cover, The Reluctant Detective, Once Upon a Crush, The Face of the Window, Missing Presumed Dead, and now More Things in Heaven and Earth. So she's a wonderful book designer. If anybody is looking for cover design, go to Mishta.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm really sorry once again for all the technical loopholes in the beginning before we started the session. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Thank you, Namrata. Thanks, Chetan, for hosting me. Bye-bye.
Bye.